Oh, this was no boating accident. It wasn't a propeller, wasn't a coral reef, and it wasn't Jack the Ripper. It was a 45. Okay, not long ago I showed you the new M&P 2.0 in 45 ACP, and I loved it. And almost immediately I started getting requests for other guns to compare it to. And it's been a long time since I've done a Slugfest, and I think we all can agree that it's high time I did another one. Well, the one that was most requested was this one, the Walther PPQ 45. So that's what we're here to do today. We're going to go head-to-head between M&P 2.0 45 and the Walther PPQ 45 in a Slugfest. So there you go. I do take requests. Also do weddings and bar mitzvahs too. Information will be down in the description. Okay, I've got two targets at 10 yards down range, side by side. Both have fresh orange dots. I'm going to start out with the Smith M&P 45. It's the new kid, therefore the challenger. So he's going to take the target to the right. And I am stone cold, have not done any kind of warm-up. Wow, love this gun. M&P Ergonomics are awesome. Okay, that was 10 rounds from the M&P 2.0. Moving on now to the Walther PPQ. And by the way, shooting Sig Sauer Elite Performance 230 grain ball ammo. Provided by Sig Sauer. Thank you very much. So maybe the Walther has an advantage that I've got 10 rounds of warm-up. We'll find out. This trigger is incredible. I can predict already I like the trigger better on the PPQ. If you're seeing it on camera, there's definitely more muzzle rise with the PPQ. Same shooter, same day, same grip. And there's 10 through that. Let's go look at those targets. First up, Smith & Wesson M&P 45, and again that's 10 yards. Not bad. The Walther, equally impressive, a little bit higher. That's just a matter of hold point and sight picture, but tighter group with a couple extra flyers. So there are the two. Okay, back to the Smith & Wesson, 10 more rounds. Speaking of 10 rounds, the Walther PPQ holds 12 rounds in its magazine. The M&P holds only 10 rounds in its magazine, so certainly advantage to the Walther. However, just so I don't have to take my shoes off today, I'm only going to put 10 rounds in both guns, just to keep things even, but know that the advantage is to the Walther in capacity. So I've zoomed in on the target a little bit so you can see my hits more clearly, probably much more clearly than I can. And we'll go 10 more with the Smith. Okay, nice. Felt myself getting a little wild on a couple of those. PPQ. With the hair trigger. Ah, a failure to extract. Interesting. Very interesting. Got a little bit of brass shaving here on the rim. I don't see any damage to the extractor hook, so one malfunction is called an anomaly. On we go. Did make me lose count though. Uh-oh. Look at that, boys and girls. Another one. This one, I could probably just pick out with my fingers. Very, very interesting. All right, let's see if we can get through this mag. Yay! All right, so two strange malfunctions there. Two failures to extract. Don't know. Another significant difference between the Walther PPQ 45 and the Smith & Wesson M&P 45 M2.0 is magazine capacity. Standard magazine capacity is 10 for the Smith & Wesson. Yes, there is an extended magazine that goes to 14, but it is quite obtrusive, but it does exist. The Walther standard capacity is 12. That extra 2 rounds, 45 ACP, absolutely does make a difference, and you really can tell that, looking here, that they fit those extra 2 rounds into almost the same identical package. In fact, you can see that the magazine for the PPQ, which is on the right, even necks up or bottles up a little bit thinner toward the top, which I think could make it even more reliable, although I've never had any reliability issues with the Smith. But usually this is done for purposes of reliability. So you've got sort of a single stack, that top couple rounds. But in virtually, here, let me put them back to back so they can face each other. You can see they are virtually the exact same height, and they are almost exactly the same width. The Walther feels slightly thicker, but not by much. You can feel it, but you can't really see it. If capacity is a big issue for you, and I know in 45 it is for a lot of people, favor the Walther with 12 rounds versus 10. Alright, so doing any kind of slugfest or head-to-head with two handguns, one thing I know you guys want to know about is trigger pull, especially if one of them's a Walther. Maybe even more especially if one of them is an M2.0 Smith & Wesson. So let's do that. Let's do some trigger pull measuring with the Lyman digital gauge, and I'll do maybe an average of 3 each or something. Start with the Smith. Wow, that is light. Okay, now, starting now. And an average, a 3-pull average of 6 pounds, 6.5 ounces. That is not bad. That is not bad at all. But watch this. I predict significant difference. This Walther PPQ 45 has one of the lightest factory triggers I've ever felt. So here we go. Average of 4 pounds and 11.7 ounces. And I would say that is pretty indicative of what your average trigger pull is going to be like. It's definitely under 5 pounds. So certainly a lighter trigger and certainly crisper and a shorter reset. All that on the Walther. Let's take a look. So fully extended, we have of course our trigger safety to take up, and then we have a little bit of take up here. Not a whole lot. Come to the wall. Super crisp. It really is. It's that quintessential breaking a strand of spaghetti crisp. And then the reset, very short and very nice tactile feedback and good audible feedback as well. Little bit of take up again, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, and then back at the wall. The M&P, of course, we have a hinged trigger, a little squishier feeling trigger, just about the same amount of travel for take up, I would say. A little bit more grit, you can even hear it. Let me put it next to the mic here. So don't confuse that with my dog chewing on a toy in the background. Alright, and then the brake. Certainly a much firmer brake, heavier brake, but very crisp. And then the reset. This was the area where they had the most improvement to do. Pretty short reset, and you do have some tactile feedback. Not as much as versus the Walther, but it's there. And then back at the wall for the brake. So between the two, certainly from an empirical evidence perspective, just the numbers, the Walther has the better trigger, if lighter and crisper is what you're after. Most people are. Then the Walther would win that battle. Okay, here's how these two guns stack up against each other in the numbers. Of course, they're both 45 ACP, so they wouldn't be doing a 45 Slugfest together. Barrel length is 4.6 inches on the Smith & Wesson. It is 4.25, 4.25 on the PPQ, so a little bit longer barrel on the Smith. Overall length, correspondingly, is 7.9 inches on the Smith and 7.4 on the Walther. The height of the pistols, Smith & Wesson does not publish this number, so I measured it myself at 5.5 inches, and that is shorter than the 5.8 inches of the Walther PPQ. The M&P weighs 27 ounces empty, and the Walther weighs 28 ounces empty. They are both, of course, polymer framed, therefore they have polymer grips, and on the Walther I have a rubberized talon grip. I don't really need one or feel like I need one too much on the 2.0 Smith & Wesson because I just really like that texture the way it is. They both have 3-dot sights, but the Smith & Wesson has, in my opinion, much preferable Novak 3-dot sights. I just like the sight picture a lot better. It's a much closer dot configuration, and the rear notch is not as wide as it is on the Walther. They're both striker fired. Of course, I tend to refer to them as double action only. Every manufacturer's marketing department calls it something different, but basically, striker fired is striker fired. Smith & Wesson calls their finish Armor Night, and Walther calls theirs Tenifer. They are both good quality finishes. The Smith & Wesson finish actually seems fairly bulletproof. But the Walther also holds up very well over time as well. It has for me on other Walther handguns. They get a lot of holster use. Capacity is where there's a notable difference. Smith & Wesson only gives us 10 rounds in the M&P 45, whereas the PPQ 45 gives us 12 rounds in virtually the same size package. The thickness is 1.3 inches for both guns. I had to measure it for the M&P, but it came in at 1.3, and that's what Walther tells us the PPQ 45 is. There's some trigger numbers for both of these. First, the trigger reach, and that's just a linear distance from the trigger to the backstrap, and that's 2.76 for the Smith & Wesson and 2.794 for the Walther. Very close. However, when you factor in the rotundness of the grip up where you're going to wrap around for the trigger. So in other words, how thick it is where your thumb and forefinger are going to be, the Justin Opinion Grip Index becomes 2.898. Call it 2.9 if you'd like for the Smith & Wesson, and 3.3 for the Walther. So a little bit of a significant difference there. Another significant difference is the price. The MSRP is $599 for the M&P, and it's $679 for the PPQ. Now, street prices are going to vary. You're going to find them both cheaper. Smith & Wesson tells us that they have an 18-degree grip angle. Walther doesn't tell us anything, but I measured it myself, and it looks like it's exactly the same. Okay, the advantages, or things I like, probably is the better way to say it, for the Walther PPQ 45. I love the ergonomics of the Walther in pretty much every shape and size they make them, and the 45 is no different. Excellent ergonomics on this pistol. It's a little on the large side, so when if you've got a small to medium sized hand like I do, you can feel a little bit of a girth to it there. We'll talk about the specs later, but it fits the hand very well. It's sculpted and molded very nicely. I do have a talon grip on this. I've got that mossy colored talon grip on this one. I do find the need for a talon grip. Even though they have that pretty paisley stippling, it doesn't do a whole lot for me to keep a good grip on the gun. So I prefer it with a rubberized talon grip. The trigger, quite possibly the best trigger on any polymer striker-fired handgun in the world on this PPQ 45. Lighter than the Janix, and all that. It is incredibly light and crisp with a very short reset. Almost too light sometimes. I find myself breaking shots early, compared to what I thought I was going to, because I tend to want to prep that trigger just a little bit. Well, I'd have to shoot this gun a lot more to get a feel for prepping this one without touching off a round. What I'm not crazy about on the PPQ of all flavors, except maybe the 22, is the sights, the stock sights. This one is wearing the stock sights. It's a 3-dot sight picture. It's a good picture, but the wide opening of the rear notch is a little more than I like. I like it to be a little bit of a tighter combat sight picture. And then lastly, and we'll take a look at this while I'm shooting it here, it seems like the Walther PPQ 45 has a little bit more muzzle lift than one might want. And as we're comparing it today to the M&P 45, you should be able to see that difference, because I can sure feel it. Part of that has to do with the high bore axis of the gun. And I think some of it just has to do with the springs, the way they're managing the physics. Certainly not a deal breaker, and certainly not unmanageable, but noticeably more. Now the M&P 45 has been a favorite for a long time, and that was the original, the way original with the horrible trigger and all that, and I loved it anyway. The 2.0, I had a funny feeling I was going to love it, and I did, and I do. It is basically all the improvements of the M2.0 that Smith & Wesson has done with the M&Ps. You've got this incredibly aggressive stippling on the grip. And in my opinion, you don't need to add anything to it. And I know my very good friends at Talon probably going to be annoyed to hear me say that, but hey, I'm sorry, man, it is what it is. I don't feel like I need to add anything to this gun, grip-wise. Magazine release is good. It's not as good as on the Walther. I didn't mention that with the Walther, but it's got an incredibly nice mag disconnect button. This one's good, but not as good as that. The sight picture is much better on the M&P. It's got a 3-dot combat sight picture as well. This one does not have night sights or anything like that, but it's just it's a tighter 3-dot sight picture. It's easier to pick up for me, and it's easier to hold on a good target and make better hits, I think. Ergonomics are M&P ergonomics, and if you like them, and I do, and I know a lot of you do, if you like M&P ergonomics, you're going to love this gun because it's got them. And lastly, it just runs. It runs and runs and runs, and I think, and you can watch now while I'm shooting, less muzzle lift. Okay, so wrapping it up with Slugfest M&P 2.0 45 versus Walther PPQ 45. Switched over to some Remington UMC, shooting the upper middle class ammo to finish the day. Good stuff. If you had to choose from between these two guns for your 45 duty size gun, whichever one you pick is a good choice. All in all, I think I'd pick this one. I just like it better.